Joomla 4. It's going to be more a Q&A session, so if you see me do something and want to find out more about it, I'm happy to stop and take a look at the feature in more depth. So release candidate version 1 came out 2 weeks ago, and by this time tomorrow, release candidate version 2 will be released. So when that comes out, it should resolve anything that's been found in the next RC. And then from there, there'll be RCs released every 2 weeks until things go stable. At some stage, in a couple of weeks, there's going to be a session which will be a Joomla bug fixing session on a Saturday. So it'd be Saturday evening our time, from probably about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when the UK wakes up, where they'll be looking at running a whole heap of patches or working on a whole heap of patches to get particular things sorted out. And the main thing that's been concentrated on there initially will be the migration tasks. So if anyone's looking for something to do on a Saturday night in the next couple of weeks, feel free to get in touch, jump online. So I'm going to go back and share. All right, so this is the back end of Joomla 4 now. No, that's not going to work. That's going to work better. Various extensions have started being released for Joomla 4, and one of the new ones that's only just come out in the last week or two is RS Joomla have released RS Forms version 3, and that's Joomla 4 compatible. Depending on what you're doing, actually, I'll bring that up. So I've got a skeleton build of Joomla, which has all of the things that I regularly install showing on the screen. So I'm just going to it's very annoying. Sorry, it's disconcerting. I can't see anybody now that I'm sharing my screen, so it's one of those fun things to work around. So I've got a Joomla 3 installation which has dozens of plugins and extensions installed. So if we go to manage, actually it's probably better if I go to components. So I've got admin tools and keep a backup. This particular install is a test environment as well. So it's got easy blog install because of things I've been doing with Joomla magazine, Tassos Engage Box, JCE, OS Map, OS Meta, RS Forms Pro, and a bunch of test extensions there. So when you go to upgrade Joomla now, when you go to Joomla update, it's going to prompt you to run the pre-update check. And so when you go to migrate, it's going to go through and tell you which extensions aren't ready for Joomla 4 yet. So the pre-update check failing means that the extension provider hasn't made the changes yet to their extension to be able to have it automatically check. And even though RS Forms has got a version that's available, their system plugins haven't all been updated for their pro plugins yet. So once you go through a lot, so I can't upgrade straight from J3 to J4 yet because of all of these problems. And then all of these ones don't have an update package available yet. And then the bottom ones here, so the Joomla 4 version of RS Forms shows that these ones need an update before I can update Joomla. So in most cases, developers are encouraged to write a Joomla 3 and 4 compatible version that can be installed in Joomla 3. And then when you upgrade to Joomla 4, it will mean that the extension is already set to go. So without a lot of that being done already, it means that this is going to be a slow process to get all of these developers on board, unless they're already planning now that RC is ready for that compatibility.
Do you have any idea? I see you have admin tools there, and you did that great presentation a couple of months ago. Has Nicholas given any indication as to whether he's going to?
Yeah, so there's a number of articles in Joomla magazine.
Oops, sorry.
There's so many articles that have been interviews with extension developers that I haven't read them all yet to know what the individual timelines are. But the common part is that they've all been waiting for the release candidate rather than spending time on the beta versions because of the tendency for things to have changed. So the big example was that the last release candidate was where they changed Bootstrap 4 to Bootstrap 5. And so that would have meant that everybody in writing third-party extensions would needed to have upgraded Bootstrap and re-release a new version of their component. Whereas by holding off to release candidate, they didn't have to make that change twice. They've only had to make it the once. Not a good sign when those two don't want to come up. So yeah, there's plenty of articles with all of the different major providers in the magazine. But if we look in here, and they've been doing some homework here, I think. So actually doing some work on the JED at the moment, but what you should start seeing is now the J4 beta tag that's only just been upgraded to beta from alpha, and there should be a new version of that tag coming out to say that they're RC compatible in coming weeks. So if you've got components that don't have a J4 beta that you use, that means that developer hasn't submitted a new component yet. I haven't read what Joomla Shack are doing at the moment. I need theirs. I've used about 6 of their extensions, so I have to wait for them to finish upgrading. But then just try to find RS. Just look for RS forms.
It's RS Form Pro. There's your alpha.
So they're still saying it's alpha there. So, so this is one of the marketing things that's needing to be done at the moment to actually get to the point where the JED and marketing messages and everything else are all in the one place. Phil Walton, who's just started as the new marketing department coordinator, is trying to piece all of that. He started 10 days ago or something like that. 15 days ago, actually, and is working his way through all the things that need to be done there. So, but you'll see, yeah, the getting extensions ready, and then if we jump into there's a hashtag that links all of the articles together on this. yeah, so if you go to the extensions tag, copy that into chat. You'll see all the different companies there that have been interviewed so far. I would have used the Joomla 4 tag, but that also includes all the articles that I've written that are on Joomla 4 features. So feel free to take a look at that. So they've what's that, 10, 11, 12. So there's 11 articles there from different major and minor extension developers on when they're producing things. And I think the Akiba one's actually due in this month's magazine that'll come out at the end of the week. So,
Thanks.
So I'm just reading Mike's question there. Is there something I need to do to have the prompt to check for Joomla 4 displayed? Set Joomla next sites are all up to date with 3927. Okay. So the version that I'm showing here is actually Joomla 3.10 alpha. And so the way that I've gotten Joomla to know that that version is there is to go in, which is what Mike's asking. It comes up with options there. So the next major is the custom URL there for the update source. I'll post that into the chat. So you, instead of Joomla next, you go to a custom URL, and then development is the minimum stability, and then put in the URL that I've just put in the chat, and that will trigger the ability for it to find the next version there. So if I do, that's where it's pulling the Joomla 4 version as the display there. And then, so then if you go to Joomla next, it's probably going to tell me, yeah, nothing's available at the moment. And Alpha 5 is the current one that's available. So 3.10 Alpha 6 is what's due out tomorrow as well. Set that back. All right, so cool. Yeah, that's all I'll show you there. So this takes care of certainly all of the extensions. The other thing that you're going to need to make sure that you've got ready to go if you want to carry it over is the new version of your template. So Joomla is hoping that the transition from a Joomla 3 to a Joomla 4 template is not as drastic as going from a 2.5 template was to a Joomla 3 template. So they've got a lot of backwards compatibility still built into it. I've not seen a lot of template developers come out yet with a 3.4 compatible template set up yet. Is anyone that uses various template providers know of any that have been done yet? Has Utheme come out with something yet? So if you go to your various template providers websites, they ideally have something there. So Utheme have actually got a beta in place.
Must be a big change for them. So
yeah, there's a few things that are particularly annoying. Well, not annoying, probably annoying for a template developer to work out. Even though Bootstrap 2 to Bootstrap 5 didn't seem, reportedly they were able to do all the changes to the Joomla core to change the Bootstrap version in a blitz over 6 hours one afternoon. Then they found when they did that, that caught most of the instances. And then when they then went to build the next release package, and they did all of the testing that triggers all of the failures in the CMS release testing, that they then found 240 other things that needed to be changed. And that second batch took another 2 days of coding to go and get people to fix all of those and test them in. But a lot of those were minor aesthetic things or just very similar tag codes, but there's a minor change in Bootstrap. So it might have been something as simple as an underscore is now a hyphen in one of the classes. And it might have pulled the margin or changed the padding or something like that. So so as they went through a lot of those, there was, I think during February and March, there was a string of patch tests that needed to be done that were basically, you'd be looking at the screen that I'm showing there, and the spacing around the boxes here was incorrect, and that was the only real thing that you could notice and what you're actually testing. So but that's all in the back end, and most people, you would think, are using the back end templates, so that makes a lot of difference to how much needs to be done compared to the front end templates. So admittedly, I use Joomla Shack's Write framework for my templates at the moment, which I haven't gone to check what they're doing yet, but I'm actually using that as a sort of a white page clean skin starting point, and then build around that. So for new sites going forward, I'll probably end up just starting off using the Cassiopeia template, which is the new one that comes with Joomla 4, and using that as a clean skin. The main reason that I'm going to be doing that is that at the moment the documentation is not there for Cassiopeia, and so I'll be writing that at the same time. And then I also am happy to wait a bit longer for the maturer versions of the templates that I use coming out to go from there. So Nikki, can you comment more on what you're just putting in there?
Oh, sorry, I missed the mute button. No, I've just posted a link to the last blog post. I just went looking because I read this blog post when it came out in October, and I was hoping they had updated it, but they haven't. So they're basically, if you're Gantry 4, that is not going to be Joomla 4 compatible, but if you use Gantry 5 based themes, they're going to be fully migrating Gantry 5 across to Joomla 4. So in October last year, they said they were preparing it all, and I haven't said anything else since.
I know that one of the things that Joomla's been working on in the release team have been working on is it's going to be in here somewhere. Extensions. Not sure if it's snuck in yet. Yeah. So it hasn't been included yet, and I'm not sure if it's in tomorrow's alpha either. There's an end of life notifier plugin that they're building, and what that's going to do is be included in what will be the final 3.9 release, and effectively be the 3.10 release. And that's going to have a couple of things that will time messages out for the rest of the end of life of 3.x for Joomla. And so that's going to have links through to all the resources that have been written on how to go about managing your transition and all that sort of stuff. So at the moment where I'm sort of winging it on the screen, there's about 5 of us that are doing similar sort of sessions for user groups in the next week. And what we'll probably do is grab all of those videos and then sit down and actually write a sequence that says, you know, here's a whole heap of resources on what you need to do to upgrade Joomla 3 to 4, and go through all of that sort of advice. So there'll be plenty of resources coming out for Joomla. You're just getting a sneak peek, and I'm also milking you all for questions and answers to throw into that. Because the 4 or 5 people that are doing these sessions are all very close to the project at the moment. And so I think sometimes we keep on finding that we're sort of working with blinkers on and know sort of exactly what our tunnel vision is doing, but whether the tunnel vision is reflecting what else needs to come out is another matter.
So Patrick, when it went from 1.5 to 2.5, as I recall, and then to like 2.5 to 3, there was a lot of fear because there was a lot of unknowns. There were a lot of unknowns, I should say. And there was also this feeling that those particular platforms weren't going to be supported for a while to allow for all of the various plugins and component developers to catch up.
Yep.
That's I would assume that Joomla, the organisation, has learned from that fear, because that must have sent a lot of people thinking, "Oh, bugger this, we'll go to WordPress." That may not have been a good move for them, but nevertheless, that's probably the case.
Yeah, there's a range of statements that get made from time to time. Whether it was a reason for someone to go to WordPress is up to
fair enough.
Whether they stuck around, admittedly, I still have 2 1.5 sites and 4 2.5 sites in my list of sites that I still support. In the 1.5 sites, one of them I'm going to finish the version 3 site this week. The second one will go to Joomla 4, and it's only brochureware. So what I'll effectively be doing is just dragging their old content into a Joomla 4 shell and future-proofing it a little bit more. Of the 2.5 sites, one of them's got a Docman installation tied to it and hundreds of users, so there's a major sticking point there. And then another one has is one that I've inherited, so there's a lot of things that I still so in being a sports site, that's going to a sports club site, they're constantly reinventing season to season what's going to happen, and so the discussions there for 2022 at the moment to rebuild that site and work out what it needs to look like and how it's going to be done. So a lot of the components that are on that site at the moment are going to be redundant if they switch to using one of the sports app to manage all their scores and things like that, which is a likely scenario. But the headache from 2.5 to 3 was always that the template language changed so much that it was hard to do anything with. The page that's on the screen at the moment is the list of potential backward compatibility issues with Joomla. And at the moment, this is not... This whole page needs to be humanized. At the moment, it's been written by developers that are scoring 7, 8, 9, and 10 on Nikki's scale. If you know exactly what I'm saying. So they've basically dumped what the code is that's changing, but they've not actually explained any of it to anybody. So you would need to know what an abstract class is in PHP to then know why JMenu changing to an abstract class must now implement a load method and things like that. So there'll be a lot of work done on this soon. If anybody is in the realms of technical documentation, feel free to shoot me a line and I'll get you set up and you can help rewrite this. In addition to this, then there's also in GitHub over 120 pull requests that have a tag called documentation required. And so all of those articles need to be pulled out and documented as well. So if they're not done by Pizza Bugs and Fun, there'll be a whole section dedicated to that at this year's PBF event, which is probably moving to September and aligning to the weekend either before or after Joomla's birthday. So it'll be the middle of September. All right. So
does that suggest? Sorry, Patrick. Does that suggest we're looking for sort of September-ish before all the release candidates?
I think that the final release candidate, they are looking at a 6 to 8 week total.
Oh, right.
Be out by the end of. Yeah, so 8 weeks would be the end of July.
God, yeah. Well, the year is flying by.
So there's, I know that in the last 7 days, so I'm moving house next week, so I've been concentrating on that in between blackouts and
good luck
and other issues. Oh, lockdown, that was the other one. The discussion has been heating up in the teams that I'm working with. So I'm 2 steps removed from the production team. I'm then working with a whole heap of people in production on sort of the next steps, and have finally got them to realise that there's some major things that are going wrong with translations being available and documentation needing updating. So the discussions going around now as to how do we resolve that, and then what type of event do we run to get that going. So those events will be happening probably within the next 3 weekends, that they'll start to be promoted, and ideally we get some people on board to do all that.
Well, are there things just on that are there things that the less technical among us, and that's me,
yep,
can do to help this? I can't do the technical documentation that you talked about before, yep, but what sort of things can we do to try and not just facilitate it, but to help the project?
Yeah. So one example, the magazine articles are always a good entry piece for people to do. So I've got to finish one tonight. That's an introduction to access control lists. So there's a series on Explore the Core, and they're designed to be written in end user speak rather than developer speak. So there's probably several of those articles that you could easily pick up. I've got to have a word with Carly. I haven't had a word with Carly on this one yet. There's probably a few others that we've got. In Australia, we've got smaller developer focus and more an implementer focus.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people have also got sort of groups of skills that, if they're implementing sites, then they're probably also either a copywriter or a graphic designer or things like that. So the marketing team are about to put out a whole heap of micro tasks compared to the overall thing. So the marketing department's going to now work on the overall strategy document at the top of the organisation, and then we'll be putting out individual smaller projects. So there'll be there's a Joomla 4 release marketing team. But there's going to be a series of other marketing activities that need to be done, and each of those will need their own graphics and copywriting and social media construction teams to go forward. So there'll be a list of we're about to rewrite the whole contribute to Joomla page, and that will actually have a way that you can say, okay, so it's actually based on the Defence Force recruiting site for Australia.
Oh, really?
A little bit different in how the timelines work on how they.
I don't have to wear khaki.
Yeah. So what you'll be able to do going forward is say, okay, I've got an hour that I can contribute. What can I do in an hour? And that'll filter all of the tasks that are available down to a handful of tasks that you can easily complete with just 1 hour spare, and then it'll increase the range over time. So it might be that you've got an hour that you can contribute a week or a month, or right up to, I'm committing my entire life to Joomla, and then positions and things like that. So
Almost.
so if you're after a regular position, it will give you some more team-based tasks that need a sort of a longer lead time and ongoing discussion. But the smaller tasks, I'm just looking, anybody that's bi or multilingual in the group, translation is certainly one that you can easily concentrate on at the moment, be it for the core or the translation of documentation and the translation of marketing materials. But of course, English GB to English US doesn't really count as translation tasks. and I've been picking up most of those. So
Good man.
I think I've worked out the other month that I'm ranked 12th in the Joomla contributors for translation, because I bought the English US pack up to speed. Had to change a dozen colour to colour and various optimizing with the Z.
Yeah.
So yeah, in other discussions that we've got going, we've got there was 260 students interested in Google Summer of Code this year, and there's been another 60 that have expressed interest in another program called Summer of Open Source that we've just had. Or I think that just closed 2 days ago for applications. So there's sort of 300 university students floating around from various parts of the world, many who aren't English as first language. So I've already been sort of pumping all the Indian students who are native Hindi speakers in to finish that one, which was sitting at 27% when I looked at it last. So I've got to check how that's going. But the whole translation program team is getting a rebuild at the moment, and that's proving to be interesting as well. So yeah, trying to think what other tasks. The documentation is certainly there, and yeah, I guess the patch testing, Robert, is a step above what you're aiming at the moment.
I mean, I tried it once before with one of the pizza bugs and so forth, and it wasn't technically as difficult as I thought it would be. But it's just it just requires a slightly different thought process, as it were.
It does, yeah. Because quite often you've got to be able to read what the person that's written the patch is thinking in the test process, and so if you happen to pick one that's not got a clear testing instruction set, then that makes it much harder to work that out. So I know, Jenny, you were looking at exactly what I was about to ask her. So Jenny jumped on board for Pizza Bugs and Fun last year and was starting to do some work in documentation. And one of the barriers to entry there is the fact that there's a rather convoluted captcha that you have to enter to create an account and to log in until you get changed. So once your permissions are high enough, the captcha drops off. But there's not that many people that have been contributing enough to get escalated to that anti-captcha step. And the captcha shows you 10 characters, then you have to answer, you have to put in 4 characters, but you have to put, like, it might be the 5th from the right and the 3rd from the left and the second last one or something like that. And so you actually have to compute what you're trying to put in. And in one of the Pizza Bugs and Fun demo sessions that they did 2 or 3 years ago, the guys that were doing the video for that had 9 attempts before they were able to get in because they kept on getting it wrong. And then they just recorded the live stream, so they didn't go back and edit that out for the their own embarrassment. So that's one of the things that hopefully gets fixed up before the next Pizza Bugs and Fun to make that easier. But as Jenny can attest to, even once you get in, the next part of using that is that it's in MediaWiki, so you've got a different syntax to format everything, and that takes a little bit of time to get used to, unless you happen to be a wiki editor. And that's also then left over 15 years now. There's lots of breadcrumbs that end up with pages that are missing and things like that. So if you want to spend lots of time on documentation, I'll introduce you quite happily to the people that are in charge of that team. Yep.
Patrick, it's Greg here. I'm grateful to those who involve themselves deeply in Joomla development, conversion, etc. But Joomla is there to create websites.
Yep.
And many of us want to focus on that aspect.
Yep.
And leave the development side up to those who are expert at it.
Yep.
As a strategy, would it make sense if you've got an existing site running on the latest level 3 version,
yep,
to just stick with 3 for existing sites and only worry about 4 if you're developing a new site from scratch and want to take advantages of whatever version 4 offers?
Yeah. And at the moment, that's the strategy that I'm taking, and one of the reasons I've still got the 1.5 and 2.5 sites that I mentioned. Certainly the advantage at the moment of keeping the 3 and the 4 sites separate and not migrating from 3 to 4 is that there's still this delay in third-party extensions being developed to get up to the next stage there. So I'm going to stop sharing because it's much better to be able to talk to everybody and see everything again. So yeah, the .9/310 is still going to be supported for another 2 years once Joomla 4 is made stable. And when I say supported, that's that if there are security patches and things like that, they will be released and fixed. So it got to a point where 2.5 stopped getting patched and fixed up. And then that's sort of the recommendation once that end of life is reached is to then keep going. Is to only install the newer version and to upgrade anybody that's still on the older version. So we've still got a few years there before that happens. In having a teaser preview of the end of life plugin, the feedback that I've given them is that it needs to be able to be turned off so that it doesn't nag super admins and doesn't accidentally nag other administrators on the site. So when you get to the point where it's that final version and the end of life notifier is there, if your intention's not to do that next upgrade, then turn off that plugin and that means that it doesn't accidentally get put in place. I might not have to upload this part, I might have to hack this out so that I don't get a rap on the knuckles. But it's certainly, it's going to be one of those things that's sitting there that's looming, that you need to have it so that that nag screen is going to consistently tell you what not to do or what to do. And I know that there was some debate when they were discussing how to implement it as to how much it was prompting you. So at the moment, I think that I think there's supposed to be 2 messages coming up. One will be changed every 6 weeks in a sequence, and the other one will be changed every 6 months. So you'll know sort of where in the longer timeline you're sitting, but also it's hopefully going to give you all of the information I'm talking about with marketing to say, here is what you need to do to upgrade when you're ready, but you've still got time to do it.
Yeah, a question about the Joomla database framework. I use a lot of custom PHP modules that basically sit on top of Joomla using the Sorcerer package to run them inside articles effectively. And that they use the Joomla database classes. Do you know if any of that structure has been modified in Joomla 4?
No, so most of the database calls are still called the same way. I'm just glancing through that potential backwards compatibility. Database. Okay, so there is a note on database and factory, but the way that reads there is that so there's a lot of deprecated code that's been pulled out of Joomla 3 and rewritten for 4. And so if you've been using the framework database package, the parts that have been pulled out of Joomla 3 and replaced in Joomla 4 are actually just database calls have been switched to use the framework. So that means that Joomla is less code heavy on sloppy bits of code, and everything should be using the framework. So certainly test and test and test as you go through. But my understanding with that one is that they haven't changed that. So
good.
I was trying to get Philip Walton on tonight to do this, but he's had early meetings in London. So we might, I can run these sort of questions past people. Although what's probably best is that we might try and run another session globally on this sort of thing and promote that out. So if you've got, if you're specifically going to have developer type questions, we'll have a session for that you can join. That's a bit of a Q&A to get that sort of thing worked out. So.
Thanks.
Right. So, is there anything else like throw questions in randomly? I'm quite happy to. If I can't answer it, there's 3 people online that should be coming online for it. So.
Well, I'll ask another one. This is a bit out of left field, but the encryption methodology that Joomla uses for users, I've had to basically write something on top of that to get around the fact that we have users who share an email address but are still distinct. So I had to borrow the encryption code and build it into my code so that I could basically generate passwords. That has changed about 3 times since I started using Joomla at about 1.7 or something. That the algorithm they use to salt and store encrypted passwords. Do you know anything about that area and whether they've settled on the current algorithm, shall we say, or cryptographic method, or have they mucked around with that? Have you heard anything about that?
So again, I think that one's fairly stable. You're using the mcrypt extension at the moment?
I believe so. It's a while since I looked at it, but yeah, I just looked. I found it. I found the code in Joomla core by digging around and basically borrowed the functions that they were using.
Yeah. So there is a short mention. So at the top of that backwards compatibility list in the updated system requirements, it's got that the mcrypt extension is now required for the Cypher crypto functions.
I think that's been required for
a
some
while,
time, has it not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this document's evolved over 4 years.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
and comes back to where I was saying that at the moment it's just a notebook of all the things that people have noted. It's not actually a glossary with definitions and all the rest of it. So that one might be one to come back to you on. Yeah, again, everything that I can see there is where things to do with the session have been, there's code that's been removed and replaced by the framework. So if you're using the latest framework, it should be fine. So, but yeah, feel free to email me a question on that one and I can pass that on. Yeah, so there's nothing specific there so far.
Okay, thanks.
So is there anything that anyone's specifically looking for in Joomla 4 yet, or are people looking at upgrading or looking at just using it for new sites?
Well, Patrick, a question to you. Are you planning on building your next new site in Joomla 4?
There's 6 sites that I'm about to roll out in Joomla 4.
Wow.
Over the next couple of weeks.
So what is it that what makes you want to move to Joomla 4? Is it the Bootstrap side of it, or not that I'm knocking anything that the Joomla 4 is doing? I'm just interested to know.
So on a couple of sites, it's the workflow functionality is going to be
okay.
in it. So so I've got 3 sites that are going to have a lot of user generated content. Unfortunately, at the moment, the only user is myself. So I want to set up the workflow to future-proof that.
Yeah.
And so that'll then flow it through. One of the other sites is just that it's a new client and the opportunities there to quickly use Joomla for a brochureware site.
Yeah, so I assume you're not building, these 6 sites aren't massively interactive sites requiring lots of third-party add-ons.
Yeah, so 2 or 3 of them are more one of the ones with workflow is going to have extensive use of custom fields and down the track third-party plugins to do particular things. So probably the roadblock components for me are admin tools that keep it back up, RS Joomlas, RS Forms, JCE, and then I can probably survive with those 4 or 5. The nice to haves are then the Joomla Shack extensions, OS Meta and OS Maps for the sitemaps. They're just tools that need to be in the arsenal. The one that is probably the deal breaker for me to go full tilt on Joomla 4 at the moment is the Regular Labs collection. So once Regular Labs are released for Joomla 4, then I can probably go gangbusters and do all the things that I need to do. I just happen to have too many tricks under the hood on my Joomla 3 sites that utilize Sorcerer and Re-Replacer and all the rest of it. So, yeah.
But that's likely to happen, isn't it? Regular Labs will go.
It is, yeah. So
yeah, and Joomla Shack, I would have thought as well, given
they're both developers that I know that were waiting for the RC rather than building for the alpha and beta.
Yes.
The catch up that I've been doing, so I've basically just cleared the last major hurdles on 3 or 4 sites that I've been procrastinating about, I guess. So it's been a busy few weeks of actual real work for a change, which is nice. So with all of those now being launched, and a couple of those, so one of them's got converted Joomla LMS to OS Campus by Joomla Shack. And that's also got OS membership, which I think a number of people in the room are waiting for the Joomla 4 version of that. And then that's also got another, I think it's got J2 Store installed on as well. So I need to wait for that. And then that site's now also got Joomla that affiliate tracker installed on it. So if anyone wants to sell business training courses, let me know and you can get a percentage. But all of that, when you've got intertwining components, then you really need the whole suite across the board. So yeah.
It just occurs to me, like the big move to say Joomla 3 was for responsiveness. What is that big selling point for Joomla 4? For WordPress and so forth. That, again, don't want to talk too much about the dark side, but they talk about Gutenberg, and this is why we should go to that particular platform. I know the Joomla 4 platform will be better than Joomla 3. It's that compelling argument, and there was a compelling argument to go to Joomla 3. It made a lot of sense to do that.
So there was a video released a couple of weeks ago, which I think got shared on Facebook. There's a tag, it's a catchphrase or a catchline for Joomla for all and Joomla for everything. And then it goes in Joomla for security, Joomla for workflow, Joomla for this, that, and the other. So that's sort of the marketing message is sort of a mixture of things to do with that. Needs some solid work still on a few parts. The feedback on the video was it looked like you need to have a rocket science brain surgeon degree to understand it, which isn't quite that's the disadvantage of using stock video. So the plan there is that all the different uses are explained. But like I said, workflow is sort of one of the main ones for me. The speed factor and the minimum amount of stuff that needs to be done to really get it to perform well on Lighthouse is a major one for me. And accessibility is certainly there. Multilingual isn't the biggest, it's not a breaking point for me, but it's certainly something that having now looked into it more is where I really want to get to the point where it's Joomla itself needs to be more multilingual, or Joomla 4 needs to be up to speed on the multilingual. But my own sites, I'm probably only going to have a half a dozen languages ever. And the exercise of converting everything and how to make the multilingual content and then get it translated is certainly a challenge on its own. With one of the sites being based around cellar doors at wineries, that is one area where having multilingual certainly means that I can pick up Italian, French, etc., all the different wine regions of the world. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And Robert, I would say one thing about Gutenberg is it's a pain in the butt.
I don't use it, but that's what.
And when it comes to that, there's plenty of if you want to use a page builder, then just use Utheme Pro because it craps all over Gutenberg, and it runs off WordPress anyway.
It's
What was that recommendation again?
Theme Pro, they're sort of, I must admit, Russell, I'm a convert. It's next level. Your ability to integrate it with the Joomla core is just excellent, and it's extremely customizable for developers, but extremely easy for end users to build quite elaborate layouts. So.
Thank you.
It seems to me that it has to go along the lines of the page builders. I think that was, I went to the WordCamp a couple of years ago when Gutenberg was flouted, and it was all about trying to take on the page builder websites that might nibble away at, like Wix and so forth, and the other one whose name's escaped. Yeah. And yet there were that many people there that already invested in various page builders, as I have with Divi themes and so forth.
Yeah.
There's one reason I think the Theme Pro option is excellent, is that it integrates with the Joomla core so well, like being able to actually use dynamic content.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, page builders are great, but if you're writing a blog where you publish 3 or 4 articles a week, then you don't want to have to use a page builder to be dragging blocks every time you just want to write an article.
Mm.
You want to just be able to use a simple content editor like WordPress used to be, or like TinyMCE or JCE, where you just like you're working in Word.
Mm.
The Theme Pro lets you use the Joomla core to build quite stylish page builder type layouts, for blog layouts in particular, that are pulling the content from the Joomla core.
So in that regard, does it sort of fit as it's effectively making the template override for the template? So you're designing the blog layout, but you're just using Joomla articles to populate that page.
Yeah, so they're like building blocks, I guess, to build the layout of the category page, but you can define which parts of the Joomla article you want to display on the page, so title, image, etc. But you can also do that with custom fields. So pretty much anything that's in the Joomla core you can use on your category layout, and build some quite sophisticated kind of stuff.
I would think that that Joomla 4 hasn't gone down the page builder route like WordPress has done with Gutenberg. It has to be good for it, because it's providing a solid platform, and then leaving the building on top of that platform to people like Theme and so forth. I imagine that a lot of people within the WordPress community would have been very upset with the idea of Gutenberg coming up when they'd already had their Divi page builders and so forth.
What I've found is that Gutenberg's not a fix-all solution, but none of the other page builders are a fix-all solution either.
No.
Having had to use Elementor, that tends to be one where your trade-off is that you can get it to look nice, but if you look at your HTML is quite bloated.
Mm.
To do some things that might be far simpler if you were hand coding it to do the same sort of thing. So, admittedly, that's why I'm not a fan of page builders. I've got multiple WordPress sites that I can't get a GT metric score above 40% for whatever reason. So, the
excess divs will do that too.
Yeah. The content shifting factor is, and that blows it out quite a lot. So, I think at the moment the uptake for the uptake for extension developers in the last 3 weeks since the release candidate came out has been significant. So I particularly noticed the RS Forms update the other day, because it's one I was waiting for. But there's plenty of others that have been popping up, and that awareness factor relies on whether they're communicating with their user base to a degree as to when you find out that your extension's compatible or not. So I'm expecting that over the next 2 months you'll find lots and lots of extensions. I'm hoping that lots and lots of extensions come out that are then ready to go, and we can start getting to the point where some clever 4.0 sites are being developed and written. So, yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I got an experimental Joomla 4 site, and the other day I was just basically pasting some Bootstrap 5 boilerplate code into it, and there's enormous amounts of that out on the web. Stuff that's churned out by page builders, stuff that's hand coded. But that really opens up in Joomla 4. If you use JCE, then you can code the BS5 classes straight from the class list and wrap it around your content. And it's really getting closer to a hand coding environment if you approach it from that point of view.
Yeah, and I've got to delve more into that when I do the Cassiopeia version of the site. I know that one of the major layout changes in Joomla 4 was that they've taken out the columns. So when you do an article blog layout, you can't say you want one featured and then 3 columns and 9 other articles on the page anymore. What you need to just tell it is how many articles you want on the page, and then there's spots where you trigger classes that will then use the flex layout to then say, okay, well, it's one featured article, then 3 columns, and then run through all of that. So yeah,
that's true. That kind of paradigm doesn't work very well anymore. But the Bootstrap way of doing things is lay out a row and then populate some columns, and then lay out the next row and populate those columns, and so on and so forth, bands all the way down the page.
Yeah,
and if you do it like that, then it works fine.
That's right. That's right.
You just got to figure out how to suck all the articles out of the store and how to flow them into those rows and columns.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's where the documentation hasn't caught up with what they've built in yet.
Oh, document. Yeah, it'll never catch up.
But yeah, certainly that's one of the areas I'm looking at, making a whole heap of effectively recipes that say if you want to have a page that looks like this, then the recipe is these classes, these components, these extensions, and then you'll be able to lay it out. And if you want to pay a small fee, you can download all of the pieces of the puzzle as a download afterwards. So that's the 6th site in the list at the moment. So yeah. Cool. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm hanging out for Theme Pro to come out on Joomla 4 as well.
Yep.
It'll really, it'll really hit its stride when that happens. Yep. Basically, the whole field will be open.
And so I think where there's a critical mass of all the different extensions that everybody uses, you'll get to a point where you know that all the ones that you really need are done, and the other 30% might be things that are legacy ones that aren't being touched. But at the same time, with a bit of research, you might find that someone else has released something that does the same thing, or in some cases, that the functionality that you're looking for is actually built into Joomla 4 now, and you just haven't come across that yet. So,
I think Regular Labs has made some progress. Peter.
Yeah. So Peter, I know is really was frustrated more by the 5-year development cycle than anything else. So now that it's come to release candidate, Phil Walton in the UK is talking to him regularly. Phil's got the same dependency issues that I have with regular labs, in that it's used for more magic than it should be. So I think I pulled together one that I've got a re-replacer now that you can put in the affiliate. It pulls the affiliate ID. No, sorry. It looks at who the current logged in user is, and then looks at the affiliate ID table and returns the affiliate details, so that when you go to the affiliate page to manage your affiliate stuff, it gives you more details than it had before, and then actually puts that in as a hidden field in an RS form. So then when someone makes an inquiry, the person that's answering the inquiry can actually see where the referral came from, so that that person can be attributed with the sale and things like that. So,
Okay.
which, yeah, as you get, you know, once you've worked out the basics of a database query in Joomla, then some of that replicates fairly quickly, which is good.